Every day, ordinary people make extraordinary choices as they negotiate unpredictable pathways to the peak of their expectations without ever taking the time to enjoy the view. Join me, Tish Tindall, at this panoramic viewpoint of astonishing personal and professional progress as we find out why my next guest is living the fabulous life. And living the fabulous life she certainly is. Marietta Melrose, I'm absolutely delighted that you are joining me here today from across the pond. How are you, darling?
Thank you so much for having me. I love your intro. It's amazing. It just, it made me think even before I met you, a lot about, how we never stop and we never take a break. But thank you so much for having me. I'm in LA, and
I know, we're delighted. I'm absolutely over the moon. You're my first guest, and you're the most fabulous. And what a life you've had. My goodness me, you grew up in Bulgaria, is that right?
yes, I did.
I moved to London, studied in London, and now in Los Angeles in Hollywood.
Yes, yeah. I moved to London when I was about 17. I went to Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And
Wow.
I did a summer at RADA and a summer at Lambda. And then I did like the whole auditioning. I also auditioned in New York. And then I ended up in London. And now I'm in America again.
But that can only be a year ago, yeah? Because you only look like you're 18. So come on.
Thank
What's
you
your
so
secret?
much.
It's that green tea, isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah, my matcha drink here.
Yeah. Well, I have a different one. So cheers. So how long have you been acting, Marietta? How long have you been doing this thing?
I started when I was in kindergarten. I've always performed in one shape or another. I actually started playing the piano when I was 4, and I thought I was going to be a pianist because I was in a musical school, and I was playing like 6 to 8 hours every day. I was going to competitions. But then things changed because my parents, we moved from like a city by the sea to the capital in Bulgaria, and then they didn't take my piano with me,
Oh
and
no.
yeah, I know, and kind of stopped playing as much, and I started doing more acting classes. So it's always been performing in some shape or another, and I definitely feel like, especially in this day and age, there is no difference. It's all expressing yourself. So even if it's through music or acting, I see it all as a form of expression.
And do you think that's what makes you a better performer if you appreciate the arts as a whole?
Yeah, um, I think so, because now we see that it's all about collaboration
It
and
certainly is.
really seeing and finding those unheard voices. And I feel like the more open you are to any type of creative input and you really put your heart in it, it's definitely, the healthy place to be at when it comes to creating.
Almost certainly. And do you feel that you chose to act because of the piano situation, or do you think you were always destined to be acting?
I was a very sensitive child, and I would come home and cry every single day. And it was, different things. Like I had this one boy, I don't think he's watching this, but he would
Well,
like
he might be.
come he would come and like bite me or like terrorize my girlfriends, and I would come home and I would take it very much to heart, and then my mom would be like, "You're weak. You're crying because you're weak." And that was getting me even more upset, because I was like, no, crying and expressing vulnerability is actually, for me, it's a form of strength. So I was able to channel those emotions and stories. And I think it started off just being sensitive and being able to encourage other people to show their vulnerabilities and not be scared of feeling in a certain way. I mean, we see it now with like mental health, and now in quarantine, people are lonely, people feel depressed, isolated. So I feel like with acting, I'm always able to, just because I'm also weird myself, like I've always been like a little awkward and quirky. I feel it's like a way of hearing my own voice, but also connecting with other people.
And do you think this kind of empathic quality that you have, do you think it comes from somewhere? Do you just stumble upon it, or is it something you're born with? Where do you think this kind of ability to access your feelings comes from?
I've always been able to put myself in other people's shoes, and I guess it's partly my family. I'm very fortunate to have a very supportive mom, and she led me by her example by always helping people, and I feel like the empathetic imagination or the way we communicate with people, it's really it really opens
Yeah.
miraculous things in our life. But I definitely feel like I was something that I was born with, but also I was always curious about what other people are going through. And I guess that's that.
Do you think that makes you more determined then? Do you think that's something that, because there must have been times when you've thought about giving up and, were
Oh,
there?
oh yeah, for sure. My father passed away when I was 10. So,
Oh,
that was like a huge traumatic event in my life.
mm-hmm.
And then being an artist, we don't have a regular 9 to 5 job. So at that point, I always knew I wanted to be an artist, but then I'm like, oh, I no longer have a dad, and it's so much harder on my mom, with all the tuition fees and all the acting schools. And I've had a lot of times when I'm like, oh, maybe, it's too hard and I don't have financial support, or um, I was an A+ student, so I could have done all these other things that would make me like a certain amount of income every month. But then I knew I wasn't going to be happy. So I chose my
Mm-hmm.
happiness, and to really just give it all up for acting and for my dreams. And then if it doesn't end up resulting in me getting an Oscar one day, I'm still going to be happy because I led a life filled with passion and devotion and commitment. And I think, at my deathbed, I'll be like, I'm so grateful I did that and I followed my heart.
Yeah, I mean that's so inspirational because I really feel that nowadays we're living in an age where you can become an overnight sensation for whatever reason, for whatever type of reality TV, and sometimes I feel it is all about the celebrity of it all. It's all about the sort of the adulation. It's all about people knowing who you are, and it's very refreshing to hear somebody of your stature saying that you were in that because it's something that makes you very happy, and something that you clearly are hugely passionate about. That's really refreshing. What would you say to somebody who didn't understand that attitude?
I would say I journal a lot. So if you sit down and journal and see what's really important to you, and if that is to be fearless and to tell stories, then really, I mean, meditation really helps me,
Yeah.
and journaling and just following your gut and your instinct. I feel like nowadays it's so hard to connect with our own voice, but I do believe in those universal truths that inside of ourselves, we really know what the truth is and what the path is. But then everything else, it's like the demons inside of us that all like a lot of the time we stop ourselves. It's not us hearing a no or other people. We maybe blame it on other people of why we don't do certain things, but it's actually our inner voice, and not letting our inner child take over and make it all happen.
And do you think that inner voice got you to Netflix?
I
Is
think
that because
so. I
yeah?
think so. Yeah. I think so for sure because I I moved to LA. I came to LA with a suitcase from London. I just graduated. It was the summer after I graduated. I did Edinburgh Fringe, which, by the way, Scotland and Edinburgh is my absolute favorite place on this
And
planet.
where did you do the Fringe though? This is crazy. Where did you do the Fringe? At
In
the Space?
At the Space, yeah. The last year it was at the Space. We did this like physical theater show. It was like a lot of movement, a lot of dance, and just because you've performed there so many times, we had these huge structured beds that were like made out of metal that were super heavy, and we had to carry them all the time.
Through the hotel.
Through the hotel, yeah. We were
trying to be inconspicuous.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But, after that summer charge, like overall performance and just having so much fun and meeting so many artists, my mom got me a gift of coming to LA for 2 weeks. And it was more like a course, but it had meetings with agents and managers. And I was like, you know what? If I'm ever gonna chase that Hollywood dream, I wanna do it right after drama school, when I'm not settled in London yet professionally, and when I have, the energy to start afresh, because moving to a whole new continent without knowing a single person, I mean, as much as I was excited, I was also scared. So I came out here and I met some agents and managers, and they were all saying, you look so young, you will be cast in so many projects. And then when you come to LA for the first time, it has this magical quality. And I'm a dreamer myself. So I was like, I'm not going to think about the reality of this situation. So after my second day in LA, I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I'm not coming back. Like, find a way to move my stuff from London back to Bulgaria. I'm staying. And she was like, what do you mean you're staying? I'm like, I love it here. I feel like this is my place. This is where I'm supposed to be. And, she's always been very encouraging, but she, at that moment she said, you're crazy. You can't do that. And with the whole immigration visa process, 99.9% of the attorneys said, we cannot take your case. I was like, I'm ready to start. I want to stay in this country. They were like, we can't take your case. You don't have enough credits. You haven't worked enough. They made it seem like I have to be this Oscar-winning actor in order to be able to get the immigration status and the artist visa. Yeah, so that was like a whole adventure, just being able to stay legally in the country. But coming back to your question, because I get to go on a lot of different.
I know, I love it. This is so exciting.
My first manager I moved out here for, in a way, he told me eventually in our process of working together, he said he was a vampire and had to bite me to turn me into an empowered actress in the audition room. I don't know if the people who are watching this or eventually would watch this, you might have seen this new show on Netflix called Hollywood, and it's all about this darker, secretive side of Hollywood that we hear about. But then,
was he an actual vampire? Was he an actual vampire?
That's what he said. He said, there's this whole like underground community of famous actors in LA who are vampires, and they gather Mont, which is like this really famous bar place. And bear in mind, I could not tell. I didn't know a single person here apart from him.
Oh, bless you.
He was supposed to like sponsor my O1 visa. I could not tell my mom because
he wants to bite me.
Yeah. And
it's not funny, really. It's quite sad, isn't it?
It is. And he, at the time I thought he was a very legit person in the industry. He's worked with a lot of famous people and producers. And
has he been biting them?
Now I'm gonna, I don't know. I asked a couple of people that know him after, and they were like, oh yeah, everyone knows he's a vampire.
Oh, wow.
But why I'm telling this story is because now at the place where I'm at 3 years later, I find that hilarious. And I find it, I could have gotten scared, left back, gone to Europe, been disappointed with how this relationship turned out. But no, I was like, I parted ways with him and I just kept moving forward. And I feel like, with the title of your show and your whole like being the here and now, I feel like it's so important to connect with our voice and instinct and just keep moving forward, no matter how hard it might seem.
And I suppose there's a case for thinking that there might be a lot of madness occurs in somewhere like Hollywood, but you must always be holding on to that inner voice that says, I can do this. I know I can do this. And people who meet you must think that immediately. And I think that's the inspirational thing here, because at such a young age, you really have such a wonderful story. And, I can see the musical playing out right here and now. I've got all the scenes ready, especially that last one. So when you when you finally get to Netflix, and you're 3 years on from Mr. Vampire and the biting incident, do you think you look back at that with knowledge? With what did you do?
Yes, so much wisdom, so much wisdom. And looking back, because I want to still save that quality that I had of believing everyone that comes my way. I don't want to lose that. But at the same time, I also want to protect my heart. So it's this ongoing negotiation, I feel, especially in this town.
And does meditation help you with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Who can you really trust? But coming back to Netflix, that was also an interesting story because Atypical, I auditioned for, it was one of my first series regular auditions when I arrived in LA. And I did the audition, and then it turned out a very close friend of mine knew the casting director. And I was like, hey, I just went in. This is my first series regular audition without having any like real huge film credits in LA. It takes a while to even get to audition for those parts. And that was one of my first opportunities. And I told my friend about it. It turned out he knows a casting director. And, my friend sent him a note being like, hey, Marietta is my friend. And the casting director was like, oh, we loved her for the part. And it was actually Paige on Atypical, which is like the girlfriend of the main guy. But I just got into town, and they ended up casting a girl who was, Jenna Boyd. She's been in the industry for such a long time. She has so many credits, and she's phenomenal at that part. But then 2 years later, another part came up on the show, and they called me back in. It was like a way smaller part than what I auditioned for initially, but they remembered me from my like quirky little dance that I did in the room. And so that's how I ended up being on the show. But they already knew me from that like first season that I auditioned.
And so it's playing the long game and keeping your own qualities, your personal qualities. And like you say, your quirkiness, which of course is just incredibly beautiful. And, you're very charismatic. And we can see, anybody who's joining us can see why people would want to give you the part.
Oh.
Do you think there's a part of you that knows you will be successful?
Yeah, honestly, I've always known that I'm gonna end up acting, and Bulgaria was never big enough for dreams. Then when it came down to going to drama school, again, I was all these worldwide known places like RADA, Lambda. I met a lot of teachers, and that's interesting because teachers are meant to empower, artists. They're meant to, but
don't get me started.
Unfortunately, I was in 10th grade at the time, and this teacher at RADA who met me, he was like, oh, don't you think about, staying in Bulgaria? Because of your accent, you will never be accepted in drama school. And for me, I am so ambitious. For me, someone who tells me you can't do that. Of course, I went back to, my room after classes, and I cried so much. Yeah. But then I was like, I'm going to make this work. Yeah. So I found the best accent coach in London, who, again, it was like super pricey, but I was like, I'm going to make this work. I started taking accent classes for 2 years before I auditioned, and I got in. So again, I feel like it's really important how we interpret the words no, and you can't do that.
Yeah, without it. without a doubt. And you know, that again, that's so inspiring, especially for you know, students who are in the industry at the moment, and especially at this time when everything seems to have come to a standstill. How are you getting on yourself in lockdown and coming out of lockdown? How has work been for you? Are there many opportunities for you?
Actually, it's been a blessing in disguise because I've never taken a break in my life. Like I've always been moving forward with such tremendous speed. And as you said, I've never
Speed
enjoyed,
and guts.
yeah, never enjoyed the view. So it's been really nice to just wake up and breathe for a second before I start my day and start being like impacted by other people's desires and influences. And now I can actually hear my voice and like know what I want to do. I filmed a comedy pilot a year ago, so I'm in post-production of that. I'm like editing it, outlining future episodes. But I just shot a horror movie
Wow.
with Chad Michael Murray.
Any
Who's one of
vampires?
no, no, but he had to bite me in the movie, which is funny. um,
Oh,
yeah.
that's brilliant. Sorry, go on.
So when I was a teenager, One Tree Hill
Mm.
was one of my favorite shows, and the OC, and Chad Michael Murray. I had a total teen crush on him. I would go to my friends, show all the videos that I can find of him, and then I auditioned for this part for a sorority girl, and it's a movie about Ted Bundy, the serial killer,
Mm.
and Chad is playing Ted,
Wow.
and I'm playing one of the sorority girls. But it was just so funny. Again, another like Hollywood story
Yeah.
to tell my kids that I ended up in the movie with my teen crush.
Well, you see, I sometimes think you put it out there, you know, it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he was like
And
on set. He was I can't probably reveal much of the plot, but he was supposed to have this scene where he attempts to kill me, and you know, we were rehearsing the scene. I was just telling him, "Hey, I have no problem being killed by you, tortured." Yeah.
anytime you want.
Yeah.
And you know, I think hearing you and listening to you, and this will be the same for everybody who hears this podcast or comes into contact with you or has the luxury of meeting with you in person. You know, to us, you're at the top of that mountain. You know, you've really made it, and whether that's because of who you are, or because of your successes in the industry, I'm not sure. On meeting you, I would say who you are and where you've got to for you and about you is really, really very inspiring. And I would imagine for you, though, there are many more goals to achieve, and there's many more sort of journeys to go on. But if you were to actually right now just stop and admire the view behind you, you know, to the side of you, what would you say was the thing that helped you get to this point?
I think it was definitely risk taking
Mm.
and being fearless. I always go against the common perception of what people would usually do. And also meeting certain people in my life that really believed in me, because I feel like, you know, no matter how positive I am, there are those times where I feel like I can't breathe and I can't, you know, I'm not sure. I'm like lost in my own struggles. But then meeting those very important role models and people that really believed in me was really also part of it. And combination of me being fearless and going against what's safe and comfortable, I think that's very important, especially for us as artists, to really go outside of the box and take those risks, but also meeting the right people on the way who would, you know, believe in me no matter what. And I have still those mentors, like one of the ladies, Julie Saunders. She's now a director of acting at Arts Ed. She's one of my best friends who I kept in contact all this time. And, you know, still I would get like a classical period audition and I'll be like, hey, I'm doing our exercises on Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas of anything else I could do? And we still keep in touch and talk very often, just treasuring those relationships with the people that come from like a true love place in their hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I've asked students to come up with questions for our guests, and one of our students, Bryony Monroe, she has just completed our HND in professional dance performance last week.
Wow. Okay.
And she's got great stamina also, because she decided to do an HNC in musical theatre, and then do an HNC in dance, and then an HND in dance in the time you would have done a complete HND in musical theatre. So you know, she's also very inspirational, and she would like to know, when you got your first big break, did you get that from an agent, or did you go after it yourself?
Yeah. Um, Thank you for the question. I I just I just want to like put this little thing that yes, we are all trying to get those big breaks, but then I feel like there's a definite distinguishment between a break and what actually fulfills your heart. And when I'm asked about a first big job, I personally would always say the play that I did at Edinburgh Fringe. I was playing a lead role just because I had the opportunity to be a lead in a show, carry a show. And yeah, that might not be a paid job, but I felt like, you know,
It was the
felt
thing.
it was the thing, and I excelled so much. Actors in LA, not to like undermine, you know, the scene and the hierarchy of what happens here, but you know, people would be in the industry for 10, 15 years and never the opportunity to really explore that journey of a character, because you know, at the beginning we go in for like 3-4 lines, and that's not satisfying for an artist. But to answer the question of a break, the first thing that I did was a movie with Julianne Moore, and I had a scene with her. And it was through my manager. I got the audition through my manager. And I went in the room, and now I'm much better at it. But I used to, you know, I tend to see all the girls in the room and be like, oh yeah, I'm not getting this. Like, the girls would be like tall, model looking, you know, very different from me. I'm like, yeah, maybe I should just leave. Like, why am I here? But then I went in the room, and I've noticed one thing. I think that's very important when you're auditioning, to notice what really helps you book. And every time I have a prop on me, some kind of a thing that I can hold, I always book the job.
I saw that on Instagram. I saw you put that on Instagram, and I found that really interesting.
Yeah, the more charactery I look, and for some reason, you know, directors and producers really respond to me when I have this nerdy look. So I went in the room. I was supposed to like hand a bouquet of flowers. So I made out of newspapers like a bouquet, and I was holding it. And I was in play pretend mentality of, we're playing. It's not an audition. I'm not here to impress anybody. I'm just here to play. And the casting director was super cool. She gave me like a couple of directions. Again, I feel like that comes from our training in theater, to be able to take a direction on the spot,
Absolutely.
take it in, and like go with it, fly with it, play with it. And that same year when we filmed that movie, it's called Gloria Bell, the director was nominated for an Oscar, and he actually got the Oscar for a different movie called The Fantastic Woman. He was nominated for a foreign feature. And it was just an amazing experience to be able, in that same year, work with Julianne Moore, work with him, and him getting the Oscar. And some things are just meant to be. That same year, it was my first year at the Oscars. I went as a correspondent for Bulgarian network. So I was interviewing all the Oscar winners. So I saw him in the room. I asked him, asked him a question. And again, we've like kept in touch ever since. But yes, to answer the question, it was through an agent and a manager. And I feel like in LA, there's this order of how things work.
Of events, yeah.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate in some cases because there's a lot of talent that is of actors that are so good, but it really does matter who you're represented by, and that determines what opportunities we get.
But it's so important not to ignore the subtext here, which is that there are opportunities around you all the time, and you have to sort of honor them and be kind enough to see them for the impact that they have at that time and the impact that they may have later on, somewhere up or down on the journey. And that's very much coming across from you. And I know that people who are trying to get into the industry, I think they will be really inspired by that, and they probably should take that on board. I
Yeah,
think.
and I guess really like I'm thinking how if I'm watching this right now and I'm someone who's graduating or wants to go to drama school and making in the industry, what can I do to help myself? And putting yourself out there as much as possible, like doing funny videos on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, ways of people finding you and you connecting with an audience through your ability, whatever that is. I would definitely do that. Like I know when I moved to LA, I didn't even have an Instagram account. And then I came out
Yeah.
here and I was like, oh, but nobody ever taught me that I should put myself out there as an artist. I
Yeah.
just thought, oh, find you. But it doesn't work that way. So I would definitely, that would be a main thing of come up with something that gives you so much joy and put it out there and don't really care about the responses. But a lot of people are actually discovered that way still. I mean,
Yeah.
look at Fleabag. It started as an
Oh,
Edinburgh show.
there's a
And
lot starts there, isn't there?
yeah.
Certainly. And I want to ask you something. But if you were to look back on your life, what would you think was fabulous? Was it playing the piano in Bulgaria? Was it getting into America? Was it going to London and finding a voice coach? Or was it Netflix? Or what was fabulous?
What was fabulous to me was that I was a child with a big dream, and somehow I pursued, and in my journey, I'm finding every year there are like moments of this is something I never expected that would
Mm-hmm.
happen to me. Being able to attend the Oscars. Now, for me, if I'm invited to do it for a fourth year in a row, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm kind of over it. I saw it so many times. I spoke to Brad Pitt. I've spoken to Angelina Jolie, Med Zendaya. All these.
And I bet they're talking to you. I bet they're saying that.
Well, funnily, in Bulgarian press, this article came out that currently I'm married, I have a husband, but the article was saying that I'm dating Brad Pitt just because I interviewed him at the Oscars. They made up this huge thing that I'm dating him, that he put me on the Netflix show, which is completely
Wow. Can we put that in the
paparazzi.
musical? With a vampire.
Yeah, for sure. But just I know there's this fabulous factor of being in Hollywood and all the huge legendary stars that I've had the pleasure to interview and meet and just be impacted by their energy. One of those meetings was Jane Fonda. I just found her so fascinating. She would just change the molecules in the air with her presence and her social activism, and just seeing that behind all that Hollywood vibe, there are people with real voices that really want to change something in the world. And for me, that's powerful. But also, fabulous just being able to to go against the odds, and no matter how many times I've heard the no, to just keep pushing forward. For me, that's something fabulous, to not stop and just keep moving no matter how hard it is.
And that is truly why I feel I have to say to you, I know that I can only imagine how proud of you your parents are, and that your father must be of you too. You really are an inspiration, and I am overwhelmed that you decided to come and chat to me today. And without a doubt,
I have to say that I absolutely loved your quarantine songs. I my husband yesterday while we were having dinner. We had so much fun.
it's all
And
true.
then, yeah. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of shopping too, I have to say.
Oh, but why so many boxes? That's what I want to know on Amazon. If you're listening, Amazon, why so many boxes? Can we not put everything in the one box?
Yeah.
Marietta, you are without a doubt living the most fabulous life. You are the most incredible human being. You have an enormous presence, and quirky or not, I just know in my heart that we are going to see you on the biggest screens ever, and I cannot wait to do so. And, you know, every week we're trying to put something on at the end, every fortnight we're trying to put something on at the end of our podcast, which reminds us just to stay where we are, stay grounded, and do what we do. And today I think we're going to end this program with a song that I wrote during lockdown, called Live in the Here and Now. So Marietta, again, I cannot thank you enough, darling. And I can't wait to see you again. And please come back on Being the Show.
Yes, thank you. And I love your song, Here and Now. So
Thank you, Marietta. Thank you so much. You know, when I was young, I listened to the radio, waiting for my favourite song. And during lockdown, I kind of rekindled my love of the spoken word without any visual. And every day I was listening to the same radio station and the same voice, and one day the presenter, Kay Adams, she said something quite magnificent. Something that really had a very simple but enormous impact on me. And something that became the inspiration for this song. Live in the here and now. Live in the here and now. Over and over and over and over. One word and one face, one smile, one embrace, one voice, one wish, one choice, and one kiss. Live in the here and now. Live in the here and now. Over and over and over and over. Live in the here and now. Live in the here and now. Over and over and over and over. One